When animating in 3D, you'll usually want to build up the animation in passes or layers. And that's simply when you animate one parameter or transform and get it mostly the way you want before moving on to the next thing, instead of trying to do it all at once. So that's what I'm doing here with the sword hilt. I've animated the position, and now I'm ready to move on to the rotations. To minimize the amount of grief that we have with rotations, we should always check in on what the optimal rotate order should be for that particular animated object. In this case, I've experimented a little already, and I've determined the optimal axis order is going to be YZX. Let's go and change that. I'll select the hilt, go to the motion panel, and the rotation section here, and set the axis order to YZX. And now we're ready to go ahead and create some keyframes. Choose the rotate tool, and we want to be in gimbal as our reference coordinate system. And we've got the key filter set to position. We'll need to go into there and change that up. Click on key filters, turn position off and rotation on, then close the set key filters dialog and enable set key mode. And let's go down to the end of the animation, frame 90. I can just skip there. And I just want to rotate in the x-axis, so I can right-click in the camera view so I don't lose my selection, and then rotate in X until that's 90 degrees or so. And if I can't get it exactly 90 degrees, I'll just type it in. 90 degrees. Okay, with that set the way I want it on frame 90, and in set key mode, I'll click on the set keys button. And now I've created a keyframe for the rotations. And if I move the time slider over and unselect that keyframe, you will see it's got two colors. It's both red and green. That means there's both a position and a rotation key present on frame 90. Red is for position, and green is for rotation. So you see we don't have a rotate key on frame 0 yet. Okay, cool. So I'll go down to frame 0, and with the rotate tool, I'm going to spin this around in the Z-axis. I'll do that in the perspective view. Right-click to select the perspective view without losing the selection. And I'm going to rotate this around. And I want it to be about maybe 140 degrees or so. Now you'll notice that as you rotate, you're getting kind of strange numbers showing up here. So this is a little bit problematic because I can't really tell what I'm doing very well. There is a button down here that you can switch that really should affect that. But it's also kind of problematic because when you release the mouse, it will go back to 0. So the only way you will ever be able to see the rotations at all times while you're rotating and when you've released is to open up the dialog here. Right-click on the rotate tool. And we're in gimbal mode. And now as I rotate this, I can see the actual values at all times, whether I'm making an adjustment or not. So this is really the only way to do this, unfortunately. So I'm going to set that to be about 140 or so as shown here. And I also want to rotate it in Y just to have it pointed towards the camera a little bit. So I can rotate that and give that a value of about, let's say, -20 or something like that. All right, and with those values set on frame 0, I can click on Set Keys, and I've created keyframes there. And let's play it, see what that looks like. Okay, so that looks pretty smooth. We can make some adjustments to it. One of the 12 principles of animation from the old Disney studio is overlapping action. And that basically states that things like rotations and positions don't generally all happen at the same time. They start and stop at different times. So you want some overlap. We can adjust that in the function curve editor. I'm going to close that dialog with that hilt still selected. Go back into the curve editor. And I only care about the rotation keys here. And I don't think I've animated X, right? If I select that, it's flat, so X doesn't matter. Y and Z are all that matter, so I can control click on both of those so I can see them both at once. And I can introduce some overlapping actions so they don't actually start and stop at the same time. I don't want to actually change the values, I just want to move the positions of these keys. So I can select that key, hold down Control, and move it. So I'm changing its time, but not its value. Same thing here. I can click on one of these and drag to move it. Likewise here, hold down Control so that they're not exactly synchronized. All right, let's see what that looks like. Rewind, play it back. So I wasn't entirely happy with that. I think at the end here, I do want them to be a little bit more synchronized than they are. So I can just set them both to have the same value if I want them to sort of stop on a dime. So I can select them both and set them to end on a particular frame. So I can say, let's end them both on frame 90. Press Enter. All right, so that's our rotation keys. We can turn Set key off again. Play that back. That was pretty straightforward. That's just the simple concept of animating in passes. Don't try to animate everything all at once. Break it up into separate little jobs and do them sequentially.